For those of you who have been following the videos on my channel, it's evident that I've been reciting selected letters from Rennyo Shonin of the Jodo Shinshu sect within Buddhism. Rennyo lived between 1415 and 1499 in Japan, and he was the 8th abbot or chief priest within the Jodo Shinshu sect, which of course was founded by Shin Shonin in the 13th century and represents the true Pure Land school of Buddhism, whose practitioners rely on the primal vow of Amida Buddha to assure their salvation and rebirth in Amida's Pure Land of bliss at the time of our death. I don't have any intention of getting into a detailed biography of Rennyo. I will say that back around 1990 I dived into an understanding of Rennyo and his teaching through James Dobbins' book on Jodo Shinshu, and I'll leave a reference to that in the description of this video. And the comments that I have herein will be mostly derived from the Dobbins book, although there are other books regarding Rennyo. In Dobbins' book, basically he devotes a chapter to Rennyo and shows how he was integral to the history of Jodo Shinshu or Shin Buddhism. Specifically, Rennyo propagated Shin Buddhist teachings in a manner so as to appeal to ordinary believers, and he's accredited with consolidation of the school. In other words, my impression is that at that time, which was a time of great upheaval in medieval Japan, that there were multiple schools or groups of folks who followed the path that Shinran articulated, but that there were some divergences in beliefs, as well as, again, no coherent institutional organization to pull these various groups together. So Rennyo, in addition to primarily in his letters, as well as in meetings with people face to face, articulated a simplified sort of breakdown of what the essential doctrine was within Shin Buddhism, and also was apparently, in addition to being charismatic and an effective teacher, was a pretty savvy politician, if you will, or person who was able to tie in the Jodo Shinshu sect organization with the secular kinds of parameters of governmental entities of his day, so that, in effect, Shinshu also became more powerful at that time as a Buddhist sect. In fact, in some ways, perhaps it became the most popular and most powerful. I think I've mentioned in another video that more people have adhered to the Pure Land approach in Buddhism than in any other approach, or even probably all other approaches combined. Now, that's not just Jodo Shinshu or so-called true Pure Land Buddhism, but also includes the earlier forms of Pure Land. But it speaks to how resonant this notion is of a transcendent, omniscient Buddha is within the human psyche and the human emotional makeup. So what was Rennyo's basic message? Essentially, there were two elements to his teaching. And if you listen to some of the letters, you'll see these two themes repeated over and over. And, as probably an effective preacher or a good teacher, that's what I understand him to have been doing, is to repeat these things over and over so that they would become embedded within the way of thinking, the way of believing, the way of practicing of the followers of this particular sect. So number one was that faith is the true cause of birth in the Pure Land. A big emphasis on faith, and a variety of descriptions to explain that faith, which in essence was to have total reliance upon Amida's vow and not rely on, I guess, what would be referred to as other sundry practices, whether that be, repeating the name of the Buddha, whether that be meditating, whether that be practicing various virtues, etc. And you've certainly picked up by now, if you've watched some of the videos that I've made on Jodo Shinshu, that there is really no practice within Jodo Shinshu as far as something that one needs to do in order to count oneself as among those who are assured of rebirth in the Pure Land. So faith was one key teaching, and then the second is reciting the Nembutsu as an expression of gratitude to Amida. And again, there was a whole previous lineage of Pure Land teachers and practitioners who wanted to indicate that one must say the name Namo Amida Butsu over and over again, somehow in order to gain merit or something along this line. And Rennyo said, no, after one's rebirth is assured, the reciting of the Nembutsu, which one can do multiple times, is merely to express gratitude. And frankly, back in the day, when I was trying to sort out my own understandings of Shin Buddhism, that was a very helpful kind of notion to clarify my own and settle my own thinking. So Rennyo indicated that what emerges then through this faith and these expressions of gratitude is basically a mind at peace, a sense of tranquility and assurance, a sense of peace and serenity. This is what we can experience in this life through this faith-oriented approach. But again, the bottom line is faith means reliance upon Amida Buddha, not from one's pleading for salvation. In other words, there arises a thought moment, Rennyo called it, a moment of faith in which we fully entrust ourselves to Amida, realizing that Amida saves us. It has nothing to do with our side, self-power, nothing to do with us pleading for salvation. He saves us as a function of his compassion for us and the creation of the vow that then is the vehicle for our conveyance across the sea that is difficult to cross. And this is a tougher thing to get a sense of, the idea that we are not doing anything to attain salvation, including pleading for help. The paradox is that when we are pleading for help, in reality, it is Amida calling to us. The activity is totally on the side of other power, or Amida. It was interesting when I decided to make this little video in order to give a little bit of a glimpse of who Rennyo was. I happened upon a quote that I had put in my desk drawer from Rennyo that had a great deal of meaning to me. And the source of it really was Tetsuo Uno in his article in the Pacific World in the fall of 1986. And he quotes Rennyo Shonin as saying, "The flourishing of a religion has nothing to do with the large numbers of people who gather or with the greatness of its secular power. The flourishing of a religion is dependent on even one person attaining faith." The irony of this, of course, is that through Rennyo's efforts, many, many people gathered and created an organization that had a lot of power. But these words are heartening to me in the context of living in the boondocks, apart from easy access to any organized religious institutions of my own lineage, which is Shin Buddhism. And it also harkens back to Shinran, the founder of Shin Buddhism, and when he says to the effect that the vow was made specifically for him, as a function of his inadequacy to perform any of the difficult practices associated with the path of sages. And, that gives me comfort, having a sense that there is a spiritual level that transcends our sensory world and what we can see and know and think about with our conceptual frameworks, our worldviews, our cognitive functioning, that is a source of comfort. And while no way of describing this can be completely accurate, that what Shin Buddhism offers and what Rennyo was able to articulate in straightforward, simplified terms is a great blessing to humankind, in my opinion.